Hey everybody, this is Frilioth and welcome back to another Minecraft tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to build an 8-pod industrial villager breeder that works in 1.13.1. Now if you're an expert on villager breeders and you don't really want to know the ins and outs of how these work and what you need to do and what you can do, what you can't do, then I'll put a timestamp in the description so you can jump straight into the tutorial. But if you want to learn a little bit about villager breeders, then stick around and I'll tell you. Okay, before we get into building this, I just want to go through a few do's and don'ts that you need to know before you start building it. Firstly, do not build this within 64 blocks of any other valid doors. That includes any other village breeders, any iron golem farms, any naturally spawned villages, even your own base if it's got wooden doors in it that might be valid. Because if you do, the villagers will merge together and this will break. So don't build it within 64 blocks of any other valid doors. Now if you want to build this underground, it can be done, and I'll show you how to do that towards the end of the video. Also, I'll go into a little bit more detail on what makes a valid door. There's a common misconception that a door needs daylight to work to be valid, and that's not entirely true. So I'll go through that a little bit more later on. Now there are a couple of critical measurements in this build that you really need to pay attention to, and it relates to the distance between the villagers and the doors at the top, and I've got a little model around the back that hopefully might demonstrate that a little better. The doors are here inside the farm, inside the breeder, on this level here. The key villager, the villager that turns it on and off, the one in the center, his head needs to be touching the block that the doors are standing on. And then the villagers in the pod, the breeding pairs of villagers, need to have a 4-block air gap between their heads and the doors. If any of these measurements are off slightly, if that villager's head is more than 1 block below the doors, then the breeder won't work. And also if the villagers in the pods are higher up, closer to those doors and close to the key villager, it won't work either. So these spacings are quite critical. But obviously if you follow the build, then you won't have a problem. So once this thing's up and running and all the villagers are fed, you should expect to get a baby every minute or so. Each breeding pair will have a baby every 5 to 8 minutes on average. It depends on random ticks, but on average, if they're fed and they're within a valid village, they'll have a baby every 5 to 8 minutes or so. And there are 8 breeding pairs in there, so you can expect a baby every minute, give or take. What I'll do is I'll run a little test for an hour and then I'll come back and tell you how we went on. So I've done my hour test and I've let it run for an hour, and we'll have a look what we've got. Look, there's loads of the little fellas, isn't there? I'm not going to be able to count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 in there maybe. Around here we've got too many to count. Let me see if I can count them using entities. Right, entity 49, 57, 57, 58. Bearing in mind that I'm in a void world, it's showing that there are 58 entities. Now if you take the 9 that are on the right hand side, that means that we've got 49 villagers in there. So in 1 hour, we've managed to get 49 villagers. Is that right? Is that right? Wow. 58 entities, 58. 58, 48, 49, 49. It's 49, definitely 49. 49 villagers in there. Phenomenal. So in 1 hour, this has generated 49 babies. Now tell me that's not industrial. Now some of you are going to build this and it's not going to work straight away, and immediately you're going to think that it's broken and it's a rubbish design and it doesn't work. It does work, but there are a few things that you need to take into consideration before you start complaining that it's broken. Firstly, you need to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that it's not within 64 blocks of any other valid doors. If you're building this on a server, and it was working and now it's not, there's a very good chance that somebody's built another breeder or an iron farm or part of their base within 64 blocks of the breeder and stopped it from working. So that's one of the reasons. The next reason is that the villagers aren't fed. Now you might have thrown a load of food in there, but each one of these villagers needs at least half a stack of food before they'll get in the mood, and a villager will use 12 carrots or potatoes in order to get in the mood for breeding. So if these villagers haven't got loads of food on them, then they're not going to be in the mood for love. And the last reason is that the doors at the top, the doors in here, have become invalidated, or they are invalid. And as I say, I'll touch on that later as to exactly what makes a valid door. But they're the main reasons why this won't work. If they're fed, if the doors are valid, and if it's not within 64 blocks of any other valid doors, this will work. And it'll make you loads and loads of babies. Okay, to build this thing, you're going to need everything that's in this double chest here. But you're going to need several stacks of your block of choice. We're using quartz blocks in this build. You're going to need a couple of stacks of glass blocks. You're going to need 10 or so slabs. You probably won't need that many, but it won't hurt to grab a handful of slabs. You're going to need at least a couple of levers, 2 pistons, 3 sticky pistons. You're going to need 2 dispensers. You're going to need 4 observers, 16 hoppers, a comparator, 4 droppers. You're going to need some lighting, some glowstone or sea lanterns, or you could use jack-o'-lanterns if you want to. You're going to need 4 chests. You're going to definitely need at least 6 doors, but you'll need 7 doors if you want one to walk in and out of the upstairs part of the breeder. You're going to need 8 ladders to get up there. You'll need 6 signs. You'll definitely need 8 fence posts. They can be any fence posts, but they do need to be fence posts. You're going to need 10 leaf blocks. Now these can be any leaf blocks that you want. If you prefer a particular type of leaf block, that's fine. You're going to need 2 wood logs. Now these can be any wooden logs. I don't know whether they need to be normal logs or whether you can use the logs that have got the bark on all sides, but you can definitely use normal logs, but you'll need 2 of those. You'll need a couple of buckets of water for an infinite water source. You're going to need a good handful of powered rails. You're going to need at least 2 detector rails. You'll need a little handful of normal rails for the corners. You're going to need a handful of redstone torches as well, and also a handful of redstone dust. You're going to need a hopper minecart for the top. You're going to need an absolute boatload of minecarts. I mean cajillions of them. You're going to need a button, can be a stone button or a wooden button, makes no difference. And you're going to need a handful of torches. Now hopefully that's everything. And now we can crack on with the build. So now you've got all your gear, you need to find an area that is 13 blocks wide by 9 blocks deep, and you're going to need to dig down over in this area here 4 blocks, so bear that in mind when you're building this. So to start with, we're going to build the mechanism that turns the breeder on and off, and we're going to put the lever in this corner here. So stick yourself down a solid block. Now these are visible, so these are going to have to be your blocks of choice, and you want to put a lever on it. And then you want to count in, this is the wall, so you want to count in 3 blocks, 1, 2, 3, and you want to count in 2 blocks from the side, 1, 2. This block here, you need to pop that out and replace it with a leaf. We're going to be using what's affectionately known as greenstone, I believe, but we're going to be using the new mechanic in 1.13, so this breeder will definitely not work in 1.12 or anything less than 1.13, because we've got a couple of mechanics that only work in the update aquatic, specifically the fact that villagers will swim upwards in downwards flowing water, and you can pass a redstone signal through leaves. But I'll explain that as we go along. So pop that block out, replace it with a leaf block. It can be any leaf block as long as it's a leaf block. And then you want to dig out a bit of an area around here. Give yourself a bit of working room. Pop out the block underneath it. Now on this block here, you need to put yourself down a bit of wood, has to be a block of wood. And then next to it here, we need to put a sticky piston. So you might have to put down a temporary block. Yeah, it's not going to work. Sticky piston and then a block like that. And now we need to run a signal from this lever into this block here, into that block. So pop out that block there, take out your redstone and put some redstone dust like that. And now when you flick the lever, the piston will push the block of wood underneath the leaf block. And now you need to put another 5 leaf blocks on top of this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you want to put an observer with the redstone facing upwards on top of that. And then on top of this, facing to the front of your farm, you need to put down a dispenser. Now this has to be a dispenser because if you use a dropper, it just won't work. And in that, we're going to be putting a bucket of water, but we don't want to be doing that just yet. Because if we do, there's a very good chance it's going to flood out and flood the floor and wash away all of your redstone. Now, just a quick explanation of how this works. If you press F3 and look at the top leaf block, on the right hand side it says distance. At the moment it's got a distance of 7. I think they've probably all got a distance of 7. Yes, they have. They've all got a distance of 7. And that means that it's at least 7 blocks away from a block of wood. That block of wood there. If we force that block up, and you can only use these up to a distance of 6 blocks. Sorry, you can only use 6 leaves in any direction, and this can be in any direction. You can go across, you can go up and down, diagonally. It's a fantastic mechanic, but it has a maximum distance of 7. So you need to bear that in mind if you're ever using this for something else. So if we flick the lever now, forcing that block underneath, you may have heard the dispenser click actually. We force the block underneath. That now means that this leaf block has got a distance of 6. This one's got a distance of 5, 4, 3, 2, and the bottom one's now got a distance of 1. And the observer can detect that change, the state change of that leaf block. And because it's changed, it's fired the dispenser. Flick the lever again, it fires it again. So if we've got a bucket of water in there and when we flick the lever, dispenser's going to fire, water's going to come out, raising the villager up to the top. Press it again, it's going to turn off. So that's pretty much how leaf stone, or whatever you want to call it, works. So now we need to just cover this back over again. Now we need to be careful, we can't cover this over. If you really want to cover this over, and there's no need to because we're going to be putting a wall round anyway, but if you really want to cover this over, you need to put a slab in there, because if you use a solid block, you're going to cut off that redstone signal and it's going to stop working. So stick a slab there, just check it just in case. Yep. Hear the clicking. So now you should have something that looks like that. Now we need to do a similar sort of thing on the other side. So get over to the other side, count in your 2 blocks and your 3 blocks from the front. So there's the wall, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 in from the side. Here we want to dig down 3 blocks. And at the bottom we need to put down a sticky piston facing upwards. And on top of that sticky piston we need to be putting a wooden block like that. And now we need to put some leaves above this block, but we need to leave an air gap there for the wooden block to move into. So you need to start your leaves just there like that, and then you need to build them up to the same height as the ones on the other side. Okay, and then on top of that we need an observer block with the redstone output at the top, the smiley face detection part at the bottom, and on top of this we need to be putting a temporary block, a random block, and you need to make this a different colour to what you're normally using because we need to know which one it is when we put the roof on. So grab yourself any old block, I'm just going to use dirt because I can, and now you should have something that looks a little bit like that. Now we need to connect the lever, which is going to be in this corner here, with the sticky piston that's down the bottom. So let's dig out a bit of room. like this. Whip out your redstone dust, bit of dust there, and there, and then just lead it around the corner into the bottom of the sticky piston. Put your lever on the block. And there you go. So now, same on the other side. F3, distance is 7. Flick the lever, distance is 5. Perfect. Now we need to fill this in with solid blocks again. Just again being careful not to cut that redstone signal. So if you want to cover this block here, use a slab. So now you've got something that looks like that. Now we need to go over to the back left of the breeder. We need to dig a hole that is 2 by 2 by 2 just to the left of this bit of these leaves. So this block here, 2 by 2 by 2 deep, like that, and then you want to stick a bucket of water, a water source block, next to the wooden block, like that. And then you want to cover this over with 3 blocks. You want to leave this block here uncovered, but the other 3 blocks you need to cover with a solid block. So we're going to have a source block of water over in this corner. The babies are going to, or the adults, by the time they've gone through the filter, they're going to be adults. They're going to come down this way. They're going to fall into here. And then this little bit of water here is going to force them right into the corner. And the minecart is going to pick them up through this corner. So we do need that there like that. So now we've done that, we're going to put in the filter that's going to keep the baby villagers out of the system until they've grown up into being an adult. So you need to find the middle block, which is that one there, it's the one directly in the middle. And you want to go in 1 block and then go over to the right 1 block. So it's this block here, and you need to dig down 2 blocks. And now you need to dig a trench all the way over to this block here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks too deep, and you need to dig that out. So now you need to get out some signs, and you need to start at the left hand side, and you need to put down 4 signs. Like that. And then next to those on this block here, you need to put a block of glass. Now really this does need to be a glass block, because the babies are going to fall down here and go underneath it. But if it's a solid block and they're under there, and because they'll try and run back up to the adults, they'll try and run underneath there. They won't be able to because there's going to be some water. But if they just run under there just at the same time that they're growing up, and that's a solid block, they're going to take a little bit of suffocation damage. So that really does need to be a glass block. And then you want to take out your water, put a block of water source just there like that. So now, as I said, the babies are going to fall into there and get pushed over this way. Now, pop out those 4 blocks there at the front. Those 4 down there like that, and then these 4 here, and replace those with glass blocks. Now this is purely so you can see your babies when they're in the farm, in the breeder. If you don't want to do that, then they can just remain solid blocks, but you'll never know how many babies you've got in there unless you do that. So now you should have something that looks like that. Now what you need to do is just stick 4 temporary blocks just over the top of those signs, just there, because we're going to be putting some water on here and we want it to flow into that corner. But if those blocks aren't there, then the water is just going to fall down onto the signs and it won't flow the way we want it to flow. So temporarily, just stick 4 blocks in there like that. Now we're going to go over to the back and we're going to install the minecart unloading system that takes the villagers out of the breeder when they've grown up. So you want to come over to the back. And you want to come over to the corner that's right next to, directly diagonal to the flow of the water there. It's this one here. And you want to dig down 2 blocks. And then you want to dig out the next one 2 blocks, the next one 2 blocks, and then you can start going up like that. So you need that kind of pattern. Now in this corner here we're going to need a powered rail, so dig down another couple of blocks and put a torch at the bottom of it, and then dig down 2 blocks here and put another torch, because we are going to need those to be powered, and then cover over the torches with a couple of solid blocks. And then you want a powered rail there, a powered rail there, link them together with a normal rail. And now you need to put down some normal rails leading off that way, so we need to pop that one out as well. So we need to put 1 normal rail there, 1 there, and 1 there, so you've got 3 normal rails. And then you'll need a powered rail like that, and then go up another one and put a detector rail on top of it like that. And now you need to pop out that block underneath the block that's got the powered rail on it and stick a torch just there, so that powered rail is always powered. And now if we put a minecart on there, doesn't quite make it up to the powered rail when there's nothing in it. As soon as we get an adult fall into that hole and get pushed into the corner, that minecart is going to pick him up through the corner. Then it's going to have enough momentum to take it up over that powered rail, and it's going to whiz off that way to wherever it is you want to take the villagers to. So let's just get rid of the minecart so it doesn't get in the way. So now you've got that. Now you need to come over to this block here where the track starts to go upwards. You need to come over to this block here and dig down 2 blocks. Just make yourself a little bit of working room just over there like that. And then on the side of the block that the detector rail is on top of, you need to put down a torch. And then you need to put a bit of redstone dust just there, which should be powered from the torch. And on the side of that block, you need to put another torch, because we need to invert that signal. Now you need to get out a dispenser, and it needs to be a dispenser, not a dropper, otherwise it won't work. And you need to put it pointing at the bottom normal track. Just there. So when it dispenses the minecart, it's going to dispense it onto this rail here, and it's just going to fall down and start working. And then you need to put 3 bits of dust just there, leading from that torch into this dispenser. So let's throw some minecarts in there. Make sure it's working. It's always best to check these things as you're going, because there's nothing worse than building it all only to find that something's not working. So just continually test it. Build something, test it. Build a switch, test it. Build a track, test it. And that way you'll have no nasty surprises when you're finished. So once the cart goes over the top, a new one should dispense, and that seems to work just fine. Now you need to just dig out these few blocks here. We're going to need some way of filling this back up with minecarts again. So if we put a hopper leading into that like that, put a block there, grab yourself a double chest, put a chest there and there, and this is where all your minecarts can go then. Now if you want to fill that up using an automatic return system, you can do. You can have a couple of hoppers going into the side of that and have a cactus on one of them. You know, the kind of return system. That's entirely up to you, or you can fill this up manually if you want to. Now we're going to need to put in a button, because every so often you're either going to run out of minecarts, or for some reason it's not going to dispense a minecart. And it does happen every so often. It's not regular, but every so often the minecart goes over the top and it won't dispense a new minecart. So you're going to need a way of manually starting this if that happens. So let's see. Let's get rid of that minecart. You need to pop out those blocks there, and you need to put a bit of redstone dust on that block. And then you need to put a solid block above the top of it. And then on the back of this, you'll need a button. Just like that. Now, if it doesn't work, or you run out of minecarts and you filled it up, by pressing this button, it'll dispense you another minecart, and then the system should start working again. So now we've done that, we just need to run a track from the bottom of there. This is like a stop valve as well. So come to the middle, opposite the greenstone, dig down a couple of blocks, put a redstone torch at the bottom of there, and then a block on top of it, and then run your powered rails out of the breeder. this is a back wall of your breeder, so it's gonna come out there, and this acts as a stop valve, because what you don't want is, you don't want the villagers going that way in the minecarts and then bouncing off something, then coming back again and running back over this detector rail, because if they do, all hell is going to break loose down there. You're going to have minecarts everywhere. So by having them fall off the back a couple of blocks, if a minecart does come back this way, it's going to bounce off that block there and then go back out of the farm. So that way you won't have minecarts being dispensed all over the place. So now you've got something that looks like that. Now we're going to start on the breeding pair side of the breeder. So get yourself to the front, find the middle, which is just here, put yourself down a solid block, and then you want to run some glass blocks across the front to the switch block, and then 5 glass blocks along the side of it into a solid block with another solid block there, and then over the back, just on the inside of the rails, you want to put down another 5 glass blocks. And then across the middle, you're going to want to put another line of solid blocks. So now you've got something that looks like that. Now we're going to put in the center column of glass for the main key villager to stand in. So you want to get to the center of the farm, the breeder, and you want to put a solid block there, solid glass block there, and then you want to put a platform of glass blocks like that. And then leaving the center here, which is where the village is going to stand, leaving that hollow, you need to build up these glass blocks up to the same level as the observer block. So now you've got something that looks like that, and the main key villager is going to stand in here until the water's dispensed, and then he's going to float up to the top to validate the doors, and then you're going to turn the breeder off. It's going to fall down the bottom and turn the breeder off again. So now take out your fence posts. These can be any wooden fence posts that you want. They can't be glass panes though, because the villagers actually stand half a block proud of the top of the fence post, where they wouldn't do that with a pane of glass. So they definitely need to be fence posts, and you need to put them just off the side of every corner of the inside column. So you'll have 8 of them in total. And because these are glass, then the babies are going to fall off the sides. If they were solid blocks, the fence posts would join and the babies wouldn't fall down. So they do need to be glass. Now, sticking with your glass blocks, we're going to need to put in some form of divider to stop the adult villagers from falling out of the pods. So miss a block from the top of the fence posts and then put a glass block just there, not directly above the fence post. We're going to fill that in with a piston later, but you need to stick a block just there, and then miss the one above the fence post and then put another one above there, and then a gap above the fence post and then a block. You're going to have to stick in a temporary block so you can place this block. And then miss the block above the fence post and a block there. And then miss a block above the fence post, a block there. Block there. And finally a block there. Now your breeding pairs of villagers are going to stand in here. So now we've done that, just stick on top of those blocks there a temporary block. So whip out your dirt again, or whatever it is you're using as a temporary block. This is just going to make it easier to push your villagers in. And now we need to build up the walls on the outside of it. So grab your solid block again, your block of choice, and you need to come up another 4 blocks in all of the corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. And then you want to fill the rest of the gaps in around the perimeter with your glass block. So now you've got something that looks like that. Now we need to get the villagers in there. So firstly, you need to get yourself a villager in the centre. So grab yourself a willing participant. He might take a bit of damage falling in, but he'll be fine. He's okay. So now we've got him in. We need to get the other 8 pairs in around the sides. Now there are a couple of ways of doing this. Firstly, you can push them in from the top. Get in. And then we'll get one guy next to him. Now I wouldn't worry about them moving about too much, because we are going to be able to move them a little bit once we've removed the dirt blocks, but at least they're in there. The second way of doing this uses the new mechanic for 1.13, where villagers will float upwards in downward flowing water. So what you need to do is pop out these blocks here, remove the fence post, and then just pop out the block that's directly underneath the fence post, or where the fence post was. And then you want to put in some water just there. 1 block below the dirt block. And then you can push the villagers in from the bottom, and they'll go up to where you want them to go to. Unless they get stuck. Like that. And then you can stick in another one. There you go. So they're both at the top now. And then you need to grab yourself a fence post and put the fence post back in under the bottom. And grab a bucket and then whip underneath and take out the block of take out the source block of water. So now they're in where you wanted them to be. So as I say, you can either push them in from the top, or you can raise them up in from the bottom. I'm going to spawn in the rest, and I'll be back in a second. So now you've done that and you've got all 8 pairs of villagers into the pods. We need to force a bit of glass down over the top of them, so A, when they share food it doesn't get wasted, and B, the babies at the bottom won't get fed. So let's get rid of these temporary blocks around the side of them, which is why we use a block that we know is not part of the breeder, because then we know that we can delete it. Now grab yourself those temporary blocks you've just picked up, and you want to put 3 blocks across there above the top of there like that, and then take out your piston, jump in the middle, and you want to put a piston there facing down and a piston there facing down. If you've only got 1 piston you can do these one at a time, but if you've got a couple of pistons you can do this 2 at a time. And then on the face of those pistons you want to put yourself down a glass block, and then put a lever in the middle and force those glass blocks down like that, and then get yourself another glass block there and there, and do it again. Then you can get rid of the pistons and the temporary blocks, get rid of the top block. You can't use solid blocks. Well, you could use solid blocks, but if you did they'd start taking suffocation damage, and you really don't want that. And now they've got blocks over the glass blocks over the top of them, so any food they throw about won't fall down to the bottom, won't get picked up by babies, and won't get wasted. And you want to do that all the way around. So we'll do it again. Temporary block, jump in. If you've got a situation like this where they're on top of each other, we'll sort that out in a second. Grab your pistons, 2 pistons pointing down, 2 glass blocks, like that. Break the top blocks, and they're encased in glass. Now, as I say, if they are on top of each other like that, just walk into them. And they'll separate. It would be ideal if you could get them in opposite corners, but sometimes they're not that willing. You can try whacking them if you like, but you can't whack them too much, otherwise they'll take damage. But you could do with them being in opposite corners. So you want to do that all the way around. We'll do one more. This is another reason not to put water in there at the beginning, because you're going to have to put a lever on there in a second, and if you've got water in there, it's just going to go everywhere. There you go, 2 more. So I'll do the last 2 and then we'll move on to the next stage. Now we've done that, we need to put in the droppers that are going to feed these guys. So what you need to do is, the droppers are going to go directly above the corners here. They're going to be 4 in each corner. So you need to put a couple of temporary blocks like that, 3 blocks high like that. And then you want to stand in here and put the dropper. Now this can be a dropper. This doesn't need to be a dispenser. You put the dropper there. Okay? And you need to do that on all 4 sides. So 3 blocks, get underneath, dropper pointing down. 3 blocks, get underneath, dropper. Then a dropper pointing down like that. Now what you need to do is fill in the sides with solid blocks. And like that. And now you need to cover the roof. So grab yourself a bit, if you want a bit of lighting in here, we're going to put some lighting in the flooring anyway, but grab yourself a jack-o'-lantern or a bit of glowstone or a sea lantern. I'm going to use a sea lantern and stick it there, and we'll put one in the same place on the other side. And now you need to fill the ceiling in with glass, with solid blocks, but don't cover underneath where the dropper is. Okay, so the droppers have got to stay uncovered. But fill the rest of the ceiling in with your solid blocks. And don't put one in the middle, because that's your main villager is going to come up through here anyway. His head's going to be, well, most of him is going to be sat out the top in order for him to be within the range of the doors. So now you should have something that looks like that. Now we need to move over to the left-hand side, the extraction part of the breeder, where the baby villagers come down into here. And then when they grow up, they'll come up into this side and get flushed over into the corner and get taken away. So what we need to do on this side is pretty much exactly the same as what we've done on the other side. So grab yourself your glass blocks and put 5 glass blocks along the side like that. 5 glass blocks there, solid block there, and then 5 glass blocks along the back. And then you need to build this up to the same height as this. And then you just need to build it up to look the same as this side. The only exception being if you needed a way to get into the top, and you may want to fill the chest up in the top manually. If you're gonna need to do that, you'll need to put some ladders up the side, and ladders won't go onto glass, so you might have to replace just a column with solid blocks in order to put your ladders on. But the rest of it can look exactly the same as that side. And then grab your ladders, stick them up the side, and then you can get up on the top, and you just need to fill this in with your solid blocks. Put a ceiling on with solid blocks. Not forgetting to stick your bit of glowstone or your sea lantern or whatever just there, so it's in the same place as it is on the other side. So now you've got something that looks like that. Now we just need to fill in the back. So you need to get yourself around the back. And you need to fill all of this in with solid blocks. Where you can. Obviously you can't put solid blocks there. But the rest of it you can fill up with solid blocks. And then take out your sea lanterns, put some sea lanterns there and there. Fill the rest of it in. And then around here where the villagers come out of, you need to stick a bit of glass there. That sort of stops zombies from getting in there. Zombies don't like going over tracks, or mobs don't like going over tracks anyway. And if you've got a bit of glass there, then it's only baby zombies that can get in. And as I say, they're reluctant to do that because they don't like tracks. And even if they did, they can't get up over that two block barrier there. So your villagers in there should be pretty safe. And by putting a bit of glass there, you can see in and they won't take any damage when they come out. So now you should have something that's starting to resemble an industrial villager breeder. Now there are a couple of ways that you can get food down to these guys via the droppers on the top here. You can either do it manually. So if we have a couple of hoppers like that, and then we can put sort of double chests on top of each one of these. And then you just throw food into the chests and it'll filter down into the droppers. So if you want to do it manually, you can do, and it's going to save you on powered rails and minecarts and quite a few hoppers actually, because you do need quite a few hoppers in order to be able to do this automatically. And then you'll just need to take out a sticky piston and put the sticky piston facing backwards on top of the temporary block there. You can change the block out if you want to, but you can't see it. So put a sticky piston there, and you'll want two observers facing in opposite directions. So you want an observer facing this way with the red stony part facing that way and the smiley face on this side, and then you'll want another observer there with the red stony part on this side and the smiley face on this side. So when the piston activates, it's going to push the two smiley faces together, which is going to cause a clock. And then take out a couple of solid blocks. You just need to run some dust then down here. So if we put a couple of solid blocks there, we don't want this redstone signal to interfere with that dispenser. So we'll try and keep quite a long way away from it. So put those blocks there and then run that dust down there. That's going to activate these two droppers. Then if we run some dust over here, like that, that's going to activate those two droppers. So now when you flick the lever, that observer is going to be forced over. It's going to drop the block because sticky pistons in Java drop blocks with only a 1-tick pulse, and then it's going to activate these four droppers around the side, but it's not going to activate the dispenser in the center. So that's how you do it. If you want to just feed these manually, if you want to fill these chests up manually and you don't want the automatic minecart system down the middle that's going to fill them up automatically, then that's it. That's all you need to do. But I'm guessing that you've got a one chunk fully automatic carrot or potato farm knocking about not too far away, and you want to fill this up automatically. So let's get rid of all of this. So what you want to do first, you just put some glass blocks around the top of the hole where your villager is going to pop his head through. Up here. And then take out your sticky piston again. And you want your sticky piston, you want it facing the glass block. So you want to put it on your block with the observer underneath it. And then you want to put an observer block there with the red stony part facing the front of your farm, and then you want to put an observer here with the red stony part facing away. Just like before, the two smiley faces are going to be looking at each other. When the piston is activated, it's going to cause a redstone signal to come out both sides of it. And then whip out your solid blocks again. You want to put some solid blocks all the way down the back of here. This is the back of the farm, so you want the solid blocks down the back of there, and you want to put redstone on top of all of those. That's going to activate these two droppers here. And then you want to stick a solid block just there, and then you need to run some redstone dust over this way like this. You're going to need to put a solid block there because redstone signal doesn't travel downwards off the top of a dispenser or a dropper, so you are going to need a solid block next to it in order for the signal to go down, and then you want it running into that dispenser there. We're not going to put solid blocks all the way across the top because we'll have a hopper on the top of them. We don't want this to be locking the hopper. So now every time you turn the feeding system on, all of the droppers will fire. Now you need to take out your hoppers, and you need to follow what I do here quite carefully, because if you don't, some of these hoppers will be pointing into the wrong hoppers or droppers, and some of your droppers won't get filled up. So you want to go to the front of the farm, the front right corner of the farm to start with, the breeder, and you want to put a hopper facing straight down into that dropper there like that. And then coming off the side of that, you need another hopper, and then another one there, and then another one there like that. So you've got that hopper pointing into that hopper, pointing into that hopper, pointing into that hopper, pointing down into that dropper. And then you want to go over to this dropper, put another one pointing straight down into it, and then you want a hopper going into that dropper, a hopper going into that hopper, a hopper going into that hopper, a hopper going into that one, and then crouch, and this one needs to go into there. So in effect, this hopper here goes this way into this dropper, and this hopper here goes that way into that dropper. All will become clear in a second. And then come to this one here, this dropper, put a hopper pointing straight into it, and put two hoppers coming off the side, so you can see the nozzles. That one points into that one, points into that one. And then you need to put a hopper pointing into the side of this dropper here, and then one above it, one there, and then one like that. So that one goes into that one, goes into that one, goes into that, and that one goes over there into that. Now you can put a solid block in the middle, and then you can put a solid block here, build up this back wall by 4 blocks, and stick a redstone torch on that. And now you can stick some powered rails all the way along here. These pretty much do have to be powered. You don't want this minecart stopping, so if you can afford it, stick powered rails all the way along the top of these hoppers like that. Now take out your solid blocks again, and you want to put some solid blocks all the way along here like this. This is going to be your wall, and then you want to run these powered rails along to here, and then you want to put a solid block there, and then stick a couple of detector rails there and there. And then you need to pop out the top detector rail, because you want it to be at an angle. You want the minecart to be be able to run down there, and the only way you can do that is to just stick a temporary rail on top of that block in order to get it to be at an angle. And then you want to stick down a couple of blocks there, then take out a comparator, and you want to put a comparator coming out of the detector rail there like that. And then off the side of that comparator, you'll want 2 bits of redstone dust, and I'll explain why you need 2 in a second. And then you want to put down a solid block there with a torch on the side of it, and then you want to put a block above that, a block above the torch, and you'll need to put a couple of blocks, solid blocks above this redstone dust, because you don't want the 2 bits of dust to join together. And then you want to put 2 bits of redstone dust on the top of there. If those blocks weren't there, that would happen, which is no good. So by putting the 2 blocks above it, you'll cut the signal. And then you want to put a normal piston, a standard piston, just there like that. And then you want to get your solid blocks out again, and you want to put a solid block there and then one directly above the detector rail and one next to it, and that's where your chest is going to go. So take out your chest now. You can put a single chest if you want, but it's just as easy to put a double one. Put a double one there, and this is the main input for your food. So if you're going to be feeding these guys automatically, you'll have a line of hoppers running in from wherever your main farm is. And this can be from any side, it can be from the top, but that's where it's going to have to go into that chest, whichever way you bring it. Now grab yourself a hopper minecart. You'll find if you put it, I'm not going to be able to show you, but if you put it there, that rail isn't powered unless there's something on that detector rail there. So if you put it there and push it, it might get stuck on that rail. So put it on here and push it that way first, then it'll come back and it's going to go right up into there. Any food that goes into this chest is going to get immediately sucked down through the block into the hopper minecart. And because we have a comparator here with 2 bits of redstone dust, this torch won't get unpowered until the hopper minecart has got, I don't know, 25 bits of food in it, certainly more than a couple. And that way, if your food comes in sort of 1 bit at a time, and you've only got a couple of bits of food in there, the hopper minecart's not going to take off and just fill up the first two droppers. If your hopper minecart just went as soon as the first bit of food went into it, potentially you could only fill up 1 dropper, which is why we put the 2 bits of redstone dust there, because it stops the minecart from going unless it's got enough food in there to fill all of the droppers. And you might be wondering why we just didn't put the hoppers coming straight out into here, and the reason is because we want these hoppers to take food out of the minecart twice. So this one will take food out when it's going this way, it'll bounce off the wall, it'll take food out coming back that way. If we put a hopper there, it would only take food out once. So it would go over it once and then go back, so the rest of them would get 2 bits of food. The one at this end would only get the 1, which is why we put the solid block there and not just having a hopper pointing into it. So now if we throw in some food, that's now going to be evenly distributed across all of the droppers. And then as soon as it runs out of food, it's going to stop, so you don't have to listen to the minecart continually going. It will turn itself off. So now you should have something that looks like that. Now before we put walls and a ceiling on the top of this thing, we just need to put in the doors. So we need to come over to the back of the farm, the breeder. I keep calling it farm. We come over to the back of the farm. We want to put down 6 blocks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then another 6 blocks on top of it. And this is where our 6 doors are going to go. Because we're only using 1 key villager, we only need 6 doors. So then we need to put our 6 doors like that. Now I'm going to try and explain what a valid door is, because a lot of people have said to me, doesn't the door just need sky access directly above it? And no, that's not the case at all. The doors depend on a different number of blocks being on the inside than there are on the outside, and that's how Minecraft determines whether it's a house. Because if you've got more blocks covering sky access on the inside than you've got on the outside, then it's like a house, isn't it? You've got more blocks in your house covering your front door on the inside than you have on the outside. So as long as we've got an odd number of blocks on the right than we have on the left within 5 blocks of the end of the doors, then these doors are going to be valid. So let me just put these blocks up, and they don't have to be above the doors either, above the level of the doors. They only have to be above the base of the doors. So that that counts. They are now valid doors because there is one block on the outside, but there are no blocks on the inside. So it doesn't matter which is the inside or the outside, but that is now a valid door. So the ceiling is going to go over here. So although the doors aren't going to have access to the sky, and this is a common misconception with the doors, these doors won't have access to the sky, but there is only one block on the outside covering sky access. There are going to be 5 blocks on the inside, so there is an uneven number of blocks above the doors on either end of the doors. Therefore these doors are valid. So the doors themselves don't actually need sky access, they just need a different number of blocks covering sky access on one side than they do on the other. I'm sorry, I'm probably boring quite a lot of you, but it's a question I am probably asked more than any other. Are my doors valid? Do I need to just grant them sky access to make them valid? And no, you don't. These doors can be completely covered over as long as the outside has got fewer blocks than the inside. Right, I'm going to fill this in now. Once you've got the doors in, you're nearly done. All we have to do now is fill in the outside and then put a ceiling on the top of it. Now, if you want to put a door on here that you can climb into, it's got to be on the same level as these doors. You can't, if you build it if you put it there, then it would interfere with the breeder, because then the guys at the bottom would be able to detect that door, and it wouldn't work because it wouldn't work. Okay, so to put a door to allow you to get into the breeder, into the top, it needs to be on the same level as those doors. Okay, so it needs to be on that level. And that won't affect the breeder at all. All that means now is that this breeder has got 7 doors, not 6 doors. So now you've put all the walls up, you need to put a ceiling over the top of it. You might want to put a little bit more lighting in here. It won't hurt. So just grab a couple of torches and throw down some light. You're not going to have much flashing redstone in here apart from that when it's on. So you do need to light this up quite a lot, because flashing redstone causes a bit of lag. You can't put one there, can you, for goodness sake? And now we need to fill the ceiling in, but before we do it, we just need to make sure that we've got a slab above the top of this chest, otherwise the chest won't work. So once you put a couple of slabs above there, the rest of it then can be filled in with solid blocks. So now you should have something that looks like this. So we're nearly done now. We've just got to put in the water at the bottom. So before we do that, you just need to very carefully get in here, pop out that block there and replace it with a bit of glowstone or a sea lantern. And we want to do the same on this side. Like that, to give it a bit of lighting. And then we need to put a water source block in the back right hand corner of the breeder. So if we get over here, pop out that block, grab yourself a water bucket, pop some water there. And that's now going to force any babies that are born to fall over into this hole. And then they'll be forced over underneath the temporary dirt blocks there. And then we want to pop out a couple of those blocks. Make sure you leave a block at the bottom, because we're going to be putting running water in there. And if you pop out the bottom one, it's just going to run out, probably wash away your lever. So now you want to get in here now, and we want to put a source block of water here, which is going to force all the grown-up villagers into this corner here. Like that. And now we can pop out these temporary blocks. And the water is going to flow downwards onto those signs. And when the babies grow up, their heads are going to be in that water and they're going to go over the top. Then you get yourself back out of the farm, and now we need to stick some food in it. We need to start filling these guys up with food. That'll start filling up. It will take a while to start with. I mean, if you can think of a quicker way of doing this, this doesn't have to be the only, this is not the only way to fill this up. If you can think of a better way, then, and I'm sure there are loads of better ways to do it, then please feel free to do it. I'd love to hear about it, actually. I'm going to leave it just for a little while for the carrots to start filling up. And also, I've been recording this video now for the last 6 hours and my voice is starting to go. So I'm going to go and give my voice a little break. And when I come back, hopefully the carrots will all have been dispersed into the droppers and we can turn it on and hopefully see it working. Right, while we're waiting for this thing to fill up, a couple of things I need to show you. Firstly, I've just put on a couple of signs so people that aren't familiar with, if you're on a server and people aren't familiar with the build, they know what to do, what the switches are used for. So on this side, you've got the breeder switch. So if the switch is up, the breeder is off. If the switch is down, then the breeder is on. And on this side, you've got your feeder switch. If the switch is up, then they're being fed. If the switch is down, they're not being fed. Also, up here, and I'm glad we spotted this prior to me uploading the video, this rail here that was unpowered caused the minecart to stop on it. It's never happened before, but fortunately it did prior to me finishing the rendering of the video. So I've put a torch next to it so it's always powered. It's an easy fix, but I'm glad I spotted it. All the droppers are now full, so it's time to feed them. So we'll leave them to get fed for a little while. Now, if you've made it this far, the least I can do is turn it on and let you see it working. So hopefully it won't let me down. So let's go over here and turn it on. Man from Atlantis in the middle goes all the way to the top. That should validate the doors. And we should start getting a few hearts. So I've had it running now for about 9 or 10 minutes or so. And we've currently got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little fellas down there, with a couple of the pairs still getting jiggy with it. So it seems to be working fine. So there you have it, everybody. A fully functional baby villager sorting industrial villager breeder that works in 1.13.1. I hope you've enjoyed this video, everybody. If you have, please don't forget to leave it a like. And if you've really loved it, don't forget to subscribe for future videos. And if you've got any questions, just pop them in the comments below and I'll do my very best to try and answer them. So thank you for watching. This has been Frilioth and I'm out of here.